Hi, good evening. Oh, the warm.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks. We're going to be talking about coaching, and we have 4 esteemed coaches here. Forgive me if I have to refer to my notes and stuff. I just got asked to do this. From my furthest left here is Adrian Valdivieso, right?
Yeah.
He's the owner of Cloud9 Endurance. In addition to being a triathlon coach, Adrian is also a massage therapist. He trains individuals and groups and applies his knowledge and education to enhancing speed and recovery time for greater athletic performance. Welcome, Adrian.
It was a good job.
And he has a kid.
Yeah, and a wife.
And to my left is Jamie Silber, the owner of InfiniteNRG. He's been working in the health and fitness industry for over 30 years and coaching triathlon for 17. Holy moly. Jamie's rich background in strength and conditioning plays an integral role in his coaching, and he works with athletes of all levels. And then Gareth, in the black shirt, is the owner of Trio Performance Center. He's been coaching for 20 years. Holy moly. He's regarded as a leading authority on metabolic testing for athletes and works with athletes on all levels, from world champions to beginners. And then Ian Murray is the owner of Triathlon Training Systems, TTS. He's been a full-time triathlon coach for over 15 years, and he works with athletes of all levels, individuals, groups, and teams, and specializes in bike fit and swim instruction. So welcome. Okay, so why don't we start with you, Adrian, and just tell us a brief overview of your philosophy of coaching.
So I think, for me, there are 5 different aspects of the whole, training. One will be the training. Well, you gotta swim, bike, and run, right? The other thing will be strength and conditioning. You you need to have strong muscles, and by that I mean, stable, active, they acted well, you can move right. So strength and conditioning, you generate strength and power. So that's really important. The other thing will be nutrition. So, nutrition is key for performance. If you're really bad, or you don't put the right nutrients in your body, you're not gonna perform well. The fourth thing will be recovery. So if you just push your body and never recover, you're just gonna break down. Your performance is gonna decline. So you really gotta incorporate your recovery. And the last thing for me that's huge is the mental aspect of training. So you gotta, you gotta believe that, what you're doing. You gotta believe on your goals. You gotta commit to them. You gotta be able to manage pain. Boredom. So all those things that that are important aspects of the training. So those are the main things that I believe in. And just keep it simple. So that will be the main thing: training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, recovery, and mental.
So I like
training.
that, just easy. There's 5 things.
Yeah.
How about you, Gareth?
For me, it's always been about sports science, because I was lucky when I started coaching. I started working with high-level athletes. So the first thing I had to do was to not mess up their careers. I mean, these were professionals. So I thought the only way I'm going to do that is by actually really having loads of data to understand them. So the sports science lab for VO2 testing, blood lactate, and then anything that goes science with that, from nutrition to bike fitting to run gates. That's the heart of every program I write, whether it's a beginner or a world champion, because I need to know what every individual needs, and I need to know that I can prove to them, even if their race results aren't great, that they're still improving. So they have confidence in their plan. So everything's about data to make sure they're on the right track, really.
That's amazing. So you worked right out of the gate with elite athletes.
Yeah, we had a team in England called One Vision that was literally every great age group from around the country came together to form a team, because there was no real governing body structure.
Right.
And that was basically the team won everything they raced. So we had to try and keep that as a high standard, and then professionals started going from that and then coming to it.
And did you ever screw up an elite athlete?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my biggest failure was with a world champion who I couldn't really get to. I couldn't get to him mentally. I could physically improve,
right.
Not physically wasn't available. Not mentally wasn't available.
Yeah. How about you, Ian? Your philosophy?
I think I could boil it down to one word, and that would be just mastery. I want every athlete to master the sport completely, and I don't want to leave anything on the table. I don't want the transitions, which are so often ignored, to be to steal them from a podium opportunity, and I don't want their recovery or their nutrition or their lack of strength attention to cause an injury. Or I just want it to be comprehensive. I think every athlete's like a snowflake, and you got to find what's missing in somebody and drill down into a priority list of the skills they have to obtain.
But with athletes like that, I mean, have you ever gotten perfect? An athlete that's just...
No, I don't think it ever ends.
No.
I think it's a constant pursuit of improvement. Even when somebody is just so incredibly good and they've been in it forever and their technique is perfect and they've been following the right plan and they're hitting on every little 0.5%, their rest, their nutrition, their recovery, the whole thing. There's still something. There's just so much going on in triathlon that you can still find something to chase and improve.
Interesting. And how about you, Jamie? What's your philosophy?
I think the thunder has been stolen, so maybe
I do 6 things.
I give away free stuff. No, I like the sentiment about boiling it down to one word, and for me it would be context. Being contextual about how you're going to approach the sport. And if you were to sort of draw a pyramid in your mind, at the bottom would be the word context. So you can give application to your training, whether it's practice, competition, lifestyle, health and wellness. And then from there you build up in terms of adding the constructs of swim, bike, and run. Then you can add in nutrition, strength and conditioning, which I'm a huge proponent of. I've been involved in strength and conditioning for longer than triathlon, and now I've come full circle as not only a certified triathlon coach, but I'm also a level 1 trainer in strength and conditioning with CrossFit. I know, it's okay, free Kool-Aid for everybody afterwards. But at the same time, I've learned how to really put context to my clients' thought process and how they want to approach the sport, and I start from that basis.
Interesting. CrossFit, huh?
Okay.
Well, let's talk about strength. And like, what do you do for strength? I mean, is it lifting weights? Is it...
Well, I think, there are different aspects. So first, I think you gotta move well. Some people they have, they have super tight hip flexors. That, for instance, that wouldn't allow them to, do, proper leg extension, right? So you gotta move well. That's the main thing. The other aspects will be just to get stronger, so you can push more on the bike or on the run or something, and create power. So that the other things just if we're put the finger like that and we're doing this requires a lot of strength, but we just pull it like this. That's elasticity. So we want the athlete to keep, kind of be more elastic. And bounce, a little bit, just bounce. It's just more efficient. Right. So those different types of for strength and conditioning, that's kind of obviously prevent injury will be maybe the main thing. Right. Just kind of be stable. Sometimes you see some people running and they're just rocking their hips. That's
you've seen me.
It's just that's a problem with the hip, core, area. So you just gotta address that right away. Right. So it's just mobility, stability, strength and power. So that's
when do you? I mean, just is a problem like I've had is when to work through an injury. When you get something I'll run. I'll have plantar fasciitis and I'll run and just keep running and running and running. And I won't know when to lay off. So how do you assess that?
Gareth and I had a conversation about sometimes our job is about sort of curbing, the enthusiasm and the zeal of those type A people that don't really recognize subjectively when they're hurt or they're overtrained. And your job as a coach is to really be that objective person that has to say, we're going to build in recovery. Right. And we've used the term in the past, recover hard. In other words, recover as hard as you train hard. But also it's the responsibility of a coach to really understand when their client is fatigued, when they're overtrained, when they're injured, and you have to put the brakes on their activity, and they're ironically paying you for you to program activity, but sometimes the job is the tough medicine of telling them when and how to train in a way that's different from their expectations.
Well, if I may add too,
you may.
I think the genius of triathlon is if you have plantar fasciitis, let's take a break from running and let's bring your swim and bike up to a level that's just phenomenal. Yeah. And that's sometimes the beauty of this sport is you can have an injury and still really invest yourself in getting great into other areas. Right. But I would also add this. For me, my approach to strength has always been, let's just have it be injury prevention first and foremost, because you can be fit enough to go under 9 in an Ironman, but everything we do is straightforward in the sagittal plane. We never move side to side. So if you're ready to rock and roll in an Ironman, but if you play soccer with some grade schoolers for 5 minutes, you're done. You're injured just from that. So we have to create an environment where we're actually protecting the body in some senses from what triathlon really creates in the weak points.
Yeah, undoing the stuck on a bike or
Right.
whatever those things are. Sometimes the strength training has to, and flexibility work, to take that back, to recorrect things that the sport naturally will put into, wrongly into place.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, I've been lucky enough to work with some athletes who have such a strong engine that their physical body can't keep up with it.
Right.
So we tested in my lab a girl who's got a VO2, and this is hard to believe, of 85, which is the highest measured in the world ever. And I've talked to every scientist I could find. But physically, it's like a Ferrari engine, but in an old Hillman Minx body. She can't keep up with the engine. So the
Wow.
only way to train her is not to
That's insane.
give her more swimming, biking, and running, because she's got that nailed. It's to make the body able to handle that engine.
That's a great example.
I see that a lot too.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a great example.
What does that feel like? I mean, what's that feel like? Like
Which bit? The engine?
just having that engine and not being able to keep up with it. I mean, it must be amazing.
Not
Well,
frustrating.
but
at the
here's,
same
here's the
time.
thing.
Yeah.
While she has great cardiorespiratory vascular efficiency, what about the other fitness domains? About power, speed, strength, flexibility, agility, balance, coordination. All those things are maybe not so much a part of triathlon in any one long segment, but we're talking about putting your wetsuit on in transition, not falling over. Getting out of the water, running through the sand, and getting your heart rate up, and being able to navigate sand, a different kind of terrain, and the flexibility. Ian mentioned that we're working in these sort of, mono constructs where we're working this straight ahead thing, and all of a sudden we have to dodge another cyclist and be able to be agile on the bike. All those things make you a great athlete, and they need to be addressed if they're deficient.
The other thing is, no one's getting paid to do this. Most people,
Right.
even the ones who are getting paid, aren't getting paid
Yeah.
Very much.
much at all.
Right.
So the health is a big part of it. There's no point in sacrificing health for fitness.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
want to do this for years, well, actually, how many years between us now? Probably 80 years or something.
Yeah.
Scary, but us four. So health's
Yeah.
a big part of it.
Yeah.
But what Gareth was mentioning, I see it a lot. That like people, like their limitant is like their mechanical. Like more so than the engine here.
Right.
Like sometimes I ask somebody to do a single leg stand, simple, and they are like shaking all over the place. Like running pretty much is just like a single leg stand with like flying between, and it's just like they're like.
Fine.
Yeah, and they're like, like every time they land, their knee goes, like that. And it's just like, this person is going to get injured pretty soon
Right.
if we keep adding the volume or, stuff like that. So I think, like what Ian was saying, like injury prevention will be kind of like the main thing. And then from there progress to, like develop strength and the power and, all that.
And do you have people that go ahead, Ian?
No.
I wanted to say, I've been a big believer, though, in this idea. We all have it. The same with people being a complete athlete. So
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you're doing sprint distance or Ironman. Is you take the time to develop the completeness of being a performance athlete.
Right.
And I have a concept that I try and get across to my athletes. It takes 3 years, I think, to learn how to train.
That's right.
Just to learn
Right.
how to make decisions like, I've got a cold, so I'm going to stay in bed,
Right.
rather than I've got plantar fasciitis, so I'm going to run a marathon, So it's
Right.
about learning how to train, and that takes time as well as so this whole bucket list mentality. people
You
have.
took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was just going to
Hey,
say. It's become, an Ironman has become such a bucket list
Yeah.
thing. And when people come to you that are non-athletes and they go, hey, I want to do an Ironman, I mean, do you just say, no? I mean, or do you go,
No, if some people are invested in it,
Well, it's a great question. As it's tantamount to what we see with climbing mountains. Will Sherpas and climbing experts, just short rope people, get to the top just to get a paycheck and just get a resume point? And as coaches, we're dealt with.
Did you just use the term short rope?
Yes, short rope.
That's a really insider.
Who was the
that's
socialite from
No, I'm
New
not going
York?
to say it. We're recording this.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
If I throw anybody under the bus, that was written about in literature. I think it's a great topic because, we have desires, we have egos ourselves, we all want to be successful, But I think we're only as successful as we are honest with our clientele and being realistic. And when they start to point to the wall and say, I want to be that or that, and there's so many variables that they're pointing towards that are out of our control, you have to be a little bit brutally honest and say, well, we have to take some baby steps, or really this year might not be your year. And they might say, well, I'm going to somebody else.
Right.
And Ian and I have worked together in the industry as business partners, and we've had to have some really hard conversations and say goodbye to clients. And that's a hard thing to do, because their feelings and your feelings are going to be way different in how they perceive that conversation. But you have to have some integrity in this business.
You have to let it go.
I think it's a tough line to walk. If somebody comes, the worst case scenario is, it's August and somebody comes to you and says, look, I'm doing an Ironman in 4 months and I'm just coming off the couch. Please help. That's a tough spot to be in, and I'll tell you why. If you say no, they're going to go to some other coach. That other coach is going to take their money. They may not deliver as well as you might be able to. So, you want to be there for them and help them.
Right.
But also, you're not setting yourself up for success, because this is an athlete who's potentially, unless you can reel in their enthusiasm and get their goals sensible and realistic, you're going to be attached to a potential failure, and I think for a lot of us as professionals, we don't want that. So it's a tough balancing act, and I think it requires a pretty in-depth consultation before you say, you know what, I'm sorry, unless you can really recognize the situation, I don't want to be I don't want to be involved in this process. But I think that these people are already into it. By the time sometimes when you get that call, they're already $750 in the entry fee. They've got a hotel room reserved for 5 nights. They're going to ship their bike, which is going to cost hundreds of dollars. They bought a bike that's $8,000. I mean, they're just really down the path. and they're not, at that point in time, they're not going to say, all right, you're right. I'm not going to do it this year. I'll do it 3 years hence, and I'll just do a couple of Olympics this year and get ready. So we still meet people all the time who are doing their first triathlon, and it's an Ironman.
I know that's just amazing to me.
It's amazing. But the other thing is, people can excel. I mean, I agree with everything, by the way.
Right.
We all get it, and my approach is normally to try and get the best out of them in the time available, with also cajoling them, because I think that you shouldn't shut down people's dreams and goals, because who are you to say they can't achieve them? I've had many people exceed what my data or my instinct would say they could do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to limit somebody's ability, but I'm also going to be brutally honest with them about where they're at. And that's
How does that assessment go? How do you when somebody comes in, you go, what do you say?
Well, mine is to put them through the lab first and have the gauge and say, well, okay, in theory, lactate should be here, but yours is there. So that's a problem which your body has spoken to us and told us we have. Right. So we're going to address that problem, which means we're going to have to do some stuff that might not hit your goals right now, but it's what your body just says you need. So it's a much easier perspective to be in when I've got that. Mm.
Yeah, it's amazing that I mean, you pick an Ironman for your first triathlon.
The other thing is, yes, Gareth said, okay, you're not gonna say absolutely not, crush somebody's dream, that. I don't think that's kind of fair. It's just but at the same time, you're well, you want to be here. You're way over here, let's be a little bit real, right?
Right.
The same thing is we have our businesses more kind of reputation and our referral. So we don't want to sell up ourselves for failure. So it's just at the same time, it's just okay, I'm gonna work with you, but might not be possible at this time, because if I just push you there, you might get injured, or you're gonna be out of the sport in a year or something. Yeah. So that's not even good for me either.
Right.
So
that's part of the educational process. What their goal is in month 1, say it's a 4-month Ironman goal, whatever it is.
Right.
What their goal is there. It's part of our process is to educate. So month 2, they're actually making better decisions for themselves anyway, because they're now more knowledge.
Have you ever just said, "Yeah, I can't. You're fired. I'm not going to do this with you anymore"?
I've fired athletes.
Yeah.
Not many. I think 3 maybe in my years, but
you call them into the office.
Well, and it's not a comfortable conversation.
Right. I mean,
generally,
how does it go?
Here's how it's always gone. It's always gone the same way, which is I'm asking you to do something that I see you need.
Right.
You're not willing to do that. I think you'd have better success with another coach just on pure communication alone. If we're not firing on all cylinders and connecting,
right.
Communication is the number one foundation of decent coaching. And if you're not communicating well, then there's no way you're going to succeed.
What's not communicating look like?
Not communicating looks very simple like this. Hey, I want you to ride for 3 hours, and here's the nutrition plan during that ride so that your goal is to feel as good in the last hour as you did in the first.
Right.
And then they come back with a story of, well, I went for a ride with my friend Dave, and Dave's incredibly slow, and so I wasn't able to hit the numbers you wanted, and I didn't eat what you wanted me to do, but I still felt pretty strong. And it's all just crumbling in your hands, and you've wasted a weekend when you only have sometimes 10 or 12 of those decent weekends.
Right.
And so once that happens a couple times in a row, you're just like, hold on, we're missing this. And if this continues to go like this, I think you'd have better success with somebody else. And oftentimes they do. So you're doing a favor to the athlete to go to somebody else. Sometimes it's just a style.
Okay.
Some athletes want the firm hand. They want the hammer. They want to be yelled at a little bit. And maybe that's not my style. Maybe I'm too soft and nurturing, and then they don't respond.
Right.
So it can vary. Sometimes it's just about style.
Interesting.
I think also, like, for example, I have a big thing. What I've learned over the 20 years is athletes who keep training journals far outperform people who don't keep training journals and don't get as injured.
Right.
So if I've got someone keeping a training journal, I don't need to really speak much apart from to say, well, the program says you should be running 3 times a week. What's your average for the last 2 weeks? Well, I've averaged once a week. Okay. That's the end of the conversation. then it's a fairly, it doesn't take much for that person to go, okay, I'm not on plan. I understand it.
Right.
And then what you see training data in Garmin Connect,
right.
and the target heart rate zone was 120 to
Right.
135, and at 170 you go, what was the goal for Saturday's ride? Did you hit it? Let's look at the data.
Right.
You don't have to be, you can cajole it out of them
Right.
and get them on track with a fairly sensible athlete most of the time.
Right, you guys both all 4 of you have diverse approaches, which is really interesting. And we were talking about the difference between artesian, is that how you pronounce it? Artisan.
That's a kind of a bread.
Yes, yeah, right, sourdough. And
Tail raised.
and scientific, right?
Yeah.
Training, and you want to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. Whenever I go to
That's good.
data and metric seminars on either power or testing, just let me make the air clear here. I love testing. I love everything from metabolic testing to field testing to time-based testing. The metrics that we get as coaches is invaluable to us, but it can come from so many different sources. But then you get a lot of clients these days that are kind of a little bit more fed up with all the data and all the retail being pushed at them. I don't want to invest for $900 into a power meter. Did I undersell that? Is that how much they are nowadays? $50 power meter. I don't want to pay for any kind of metabolic testing. I really want to train by my heart. And I'll say, well, do you want to use a heart rate monitor? No heart rate monitor. And I said, well, there's things called training test scores. There's rated perceived exertion. There's a lot of margin of error there because obviously they're not going to communicate sometimes if they've had a bad workout, but they want to please you. But at the same time, you have to kind of figure out who your athlete is and pre-qualify them and say, okay, well, you know what? You'd be a great candidate for going to see someone like Gareth. Like I'd said to someone to Gareth, they really, really wanted to know where their numbers were, where their thresholds were, where they need to be based on the volume of training that I'm going to give them. And at the same time, they might want data from me and want to know exactly how their bike is going to be the bike they can have for their, body type. And then someone that comes to me specifically, they really, really want to get into the mechanics of running or how to do injury prevention through strength training and work on global movement patterns that are attributed to better performance in swim, bike, and run and learn those strength conditioning movement patterns. So it's one of those things where you can be your best as a coach by being open to everything, but at the same time, it's okay to tell a client, you don't have to invest in everything to be a good athlete if this is where your mindset's at.
Yeah, I like the gear though.
I know.
Yeah,
He's
I
a
love the
gearhead.
stuff.
But here's the thing. Too many athletes go and say, well, I bought this power meter. And I'm like, great, how's it going? Well, yesterday I hit 850 watts. Can you believe it?
And there's no context.
There's no
behind that.
context. Or I bought this heart rate monitor and I got up to 179. Can you believe it? That's like, it's such a waste.
Right.
So if you're going to go down the path of making that equipment purchase, then we have to put that in a position where it's actually helping you train so that you understand what it means and that it's there supporting you. And I'm willing to work with an athlete on any level. On any level. If somebody doesn't want any electronics on their body and they just want to go by feel, cool, we'll make it work. But as a coach, I think we all appreciate the feedback because we can't be there with our athletes on every bike ride, on every run, on every swim. So we want to know afterwards. We want to see, an objective analysis of that workout. And Gareth's already referenced it. You were supposed to be between 123 and 130 beats on that day, and you came back and you spent the whole time at 168. That workout didn't achieve what we needed to do. We didn't access the energy system we had to on that time. And it's important to know those things. And not every athlete, the learning curve is just so much steeper when you have data.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with cadence now.
In your running.
In my running, I'm obsessed with cadence for no good reason at all.
So are you running with a metronome clipped to your visor yet?
Yeah.
We'll get you one.
Can you do that?
Sure you can.
No, you can beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Beep, beep.
And that can be used for swimming too, where you set it to the rate of turnover and match it.
You could also count.
You could do
Yeah.
that.
With a stopwatch. Like,
Yeah.
God.
Right. Well, but I'm just because
30 steps for 10 seconds,
because it's
baby.
there.
Just hit
The
it.
cadence is there,
Sure.
and I look at it and I go, oh, good.
Sometimes feedback is a partner in training. Sometimes
Right.
it's a little, teddy bear that some people need. And you got to respect that. And I also really feel as a coach that sometimes you really need that feedback to really sort of break through some of the back and forth of them hemming and hawing. So you
Right.
know what? You didn't hit your numbers today, and these numbers are specific to Ian's point.
Now,
to the energy system
I'm sorry to
that we're
interrupt you.
training. It's okay.
How hands-on are you with clients? I mean, in other words, like you're saying they come to you and you report, and this is a total newbie question. They come to you, report. Is that how it goes? Like you have once a week meetings or?
Like my style is pretty hands-on.
Okay.
Like
What does that
personally,
look
it's like I have several workouts a week, and we just get together.
Right.
Like train. Like a lot of times we train together. So and also have the other aspect when that is like more remote. They give me same thing feedback. You need more specific. I can get either training peaks, Garmin Connect, or stuff like that.
Right.
So it could be as simple as I don't know, like the country club, the Brentwood Country Club. It's a 2-mile thing. So how long did it take you? Just
Right.
as simple as that.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you need some metrics, but you can give the athlete some kind of flexibility, right? Because sometimes people get out like I'm on my zone 2, but they are like breathing like. Well, that's not zone 2. You gotta understand a little bit what that means.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel your body. You're gonna see what it matches your pace. What are you doing on the bike? On the swim or something like that. So I think we need some metrics, but also we need kind of some flexibility. And sometimes since I'm a lot of hands-on, I see what they're doing. I run right next to them, and it's just like, okay, you're not hitting the pace that you're supposed to.
Right.
You're either going too easy, too hard, or stuff like that. So just give it feedback.
I really like every workout I write to have 4 components. The sport, which is a given, you know what you're doing. The duration, how long that is. The intensity for that activity. And then the last one, which I think too many athletes are missing, which is some sort of technical focus. We're in an endurance sport. You'll be so much better if you can work towards a greater efficiency. So let's take the swim, for example.
Okay.
When an athlete works with a coach in town, in person, where you can see one another, and that coach then can put something technical in that swim workout. So you're going swimming, you're going to swim 3,000 yards, you're going to swim comfortably in aerobic pace, and I want you to focus on keeping your head down in the water so that your hips and legs are higher and you're level and you're just slipping through. Well, you have to be able to tell that story, and if you can't do it in person, then the challenge is there. So on the rare occasion that an athlete works with a remote coach, I just started with a woman named Kathy who lives in New York, and I just had her husband go to the pool with her with the phone and just videotape a length. And I'll take that. I'll take anything I can get.
Right.
And he sent that to me in an email, and right away, I came up with 3 focus points that I want her swimming with. So then we reduce the yardage, we take out the intensity, and we're just going to make her faster by having some technical focus in the swim.
And you reply with a vine?
No, I sent her Snapchat. Good job, Tom.
And then it comes back. So what makes a successful age group athlete? I mean,
Can we
just
finish
you-
the last question?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, go ahead, please.
For me, it depends on the type of person as to what they need. So, for example, I coached a girl over 9 years straight. I didn't see her. but she was top 5 in the world at
That's
Xterra
crazy.
as a professional. But I didn't need to see her because technically, I saw her 9 years, and she's an ex-Olympic swimmer, so that's down.
Right.
But in terms of seeing data, and she also knew how to train, she'd been educated, she could basically hit stuff. I could see her on paper. It was
Right.
really, but there's other people, of course, though, they might be a beginner, but they need so much hands-on because you can correct stuff at the start.
Right.
So if I can get somebody in my lab and in the pool, and in 3 one-hour sessions, get swim video, bike data, run data, then it's golden.
That's
They
a
can
great
then
way to
go
start.
away and
Yeah.
then they can train really smart.
That is a great way to start, right?
But I'm like Ian, like in my lab I do this session, I call it trio, and basically I have a swim machine, bike thing and a run thing. And in an hour I get them swimming, biking and running, but at the right intensity based on the lab data, videoing it while they're going, and I can see the power, I can see the pedal stroke, so that in the session it's the right intensity, it's the right triathlon workout, but it's also all technical stuff going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take that, I mean I do it in my lab because that's time efficient for me, but you can take that like you do onto the golf course or on a
Right.
phone. Having all those different components in a workout is really important.
Right. So when you get someone comes here and goes, I want to do a triathlon, and they've never swam in the ocean. You know, how do you, that seems to be the biggest, a huge fear among.
Ian and I have dealt with this. We've taught many open water clinics, and we talk about how in the pool you can learn technically everything you need to know about swimming in terms of your technique and your efficiency. We talk about reducing drag, finding balance at the surface of the water. But when it comes to the open water, there's variables in there that are very foreign to even experienced swimmers. So really practice specificity and really learning how to understand the open water is something that we've pride ourselves in, where we've actually staged and held clinics over the years
Right.
with groups, and also boiled it down to a few individuals, even privates, where people really want to take advantage of giving over that trepidation of entering the water with all that energy coming at you. And then once you're out in the open water, all the navigation. So I think as a coach, whether you're hands-on or you have access to environments where they can learn and be in the open water, it's an invaluable part of the sport.
Yeah.
It has to be done if they're going to compete in open water events. Even if it's a lake, there's a whole dynamic that goes beyond what you can learn in a pool.
Right. And go ahead, Gareth.
Yeah, in England, of course, no one swims open water because it's minus 30.
Right.
Minus 30 and dirty. So
Called
when I came to
ponds.
the States, was the first time I swam in the ocean.
No kidding.
But I did Ironman in
Whoa.
Lanzarote, though, where it was like a lake anyway, because it's flat. So the States and waves was the first time. So I still now don't take anyone in the open water because there's better people at it than me. I'll refer that out. But of course, it's got to be a key part of your training.
Right.
But it's only fair to put someone in that situation if they do have a sound technical understanding from the pool, and there's certainly you teach them open water sighting skills,
Right.
recovery skills, all that sort of stuff in the pool anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they've got that skill set to take with them.
For years, I've been leading the swim clinics for Michael Epstein's Nautica Malibu Triathlon at Zuma Beach, with sometimes the help from Jamie, Adrian, my wife Alexandra. We get a big group. I mean, we'll get 80 people there, and we'll split them up into 3. And there are people showing up to swim in the ocean who can't swim 300 yards in a pool without stopping, and that is flatly insulting. That's rude. You have to be
How do you really feel?
you have to be a competent pool swimmer before you can go to the open water. And in fact, 98% of what you're doing in the open water is learned in the pool and is mastered in the pool, and there's only a couple of little tweaks we can make to that in open water. So even in the worst case scenario in an ocean, not even lake, river, piece of cake, but you really have to invest your time in the pool. That's where good swimming starts, that's where it gets mastered, and then when you go down to the open water, there's just a couple of tweaks to make from there. And
A
plus,
couple of tweaks. I mean,
sighting,
yeah.
because you don't have the lane ropes and the tile lines to keep you going straight, so
Right.
you have to sight without it interrupting or destroying your stroke.
And
So
those
that's
crazy
number one.
waves.
And a duck dive that can be really introduced in a shallow pool. You can actually learn that skill well in a shallow pool and then take it to the ocean very easily.
Okay.
But you have to be able to do that, and you really have to keep that skill acquisition going in the pool before you come out into the open water.
When do you know that you need a coach? That like you're starting out. I could go to Triathlon
Sure,
magazine and get the.
You should not go to Triathlon magazine.
Right.
Because I've spent I've been coaching full time for 22 years.
Right.
And I've spent 22 years undoing what magazines do to us.
Yeah, well, that's
Just buy this product and
Right.
train on this crazy
yeah,
mindset. It's just
exactly right. Do an Ironman in 1 week.
yeah, so don't buy any magazines. Actually,
Yeah.
invest in don't buy anything. Just invest in a coach and then go and earn
Yeah.
your. I mean, I come from an era where we earned our first good bike. Like you would train on a bike that was pathetic, and then you would earn the right to ride a good bike. Little strange mindset, I understand.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, you actually was really
But
useful doing it
understand,
that way.
yeah.
It actually made sense that when you actually bought a proper bike, in
Right.
terms of a tri-bike and bars, you had some skill to deal with it, and you knew what you were buying and how to sit on it and pedal it, and everything was.
Yeah.
So I think magazines do a lot of damage.
I've written many of those articles.
I think it depends on your goal, right? Like, for instance, somebody doesn't know how to swim, well, I need a coach to learn how to swim, right? That's
Right.
one thing. Like somebody that, like, let's say, like wants to do an Ironman, like that they don't know, like they don't have any idea of like what kind of volume do you need, like what kind of, like how many sessions a week do you need, like what is your weakness, like all that. Yeah. Like for those things you will need a coach. So I think, if you are like already, like a competitive athlete, but you want to improve. Okay. So it's like, okay, so what do I need to be better at? Okay, somebody that, has the knowledge to help you, like find your weaknesses, strengths, like what energy system you are like, lacking, work on, stuff like that. Like technique, like you're going to be more efficient, or a strength and conditioning coach that, you need to improve, on that aspect of your training. So I think it depends on the goal. So what do you want?
Right.
What do you get out of the sport? What are you looking for? And, how can somebody help you? That's
What's like the craziest thing someone's come to you and said, like, this is an unrealistic goal? Like,
I remember a young woman in Santa Monica, this was a decade ago, and she came to work with a coach who was working with TTS. And she'd never done anything athletic, not single sport or multi-sport, and she said, this sport looks interesting to me. I'd like to be a professional. And the coach was incensed and said to me, nobody goes down to Venice and gets into a pickup basketball game and said, that was really fun. I think I'm going to join the Lakers. There's like such a level of disrespect, for triathlon that you can just walk right in and do what you want to do.
yeah, nobody knows how hard it is sometimes.
Nobody gets how fast those people are going. I mean, it's just, there are things going on in triathlon, and our sport's pretty young still, but the level of talent in the top 5 of even a regional Ironman, or the level of talent at a Continental Cup in ITU, which is their lowest rung on the ladder. I mean,
I could do that.
Easy.
Yeah.
Now that you're working on your cadence and your run, you got to
How about you, Jamie? Crazy.
I was just trying to go back. I wouldn't say crazy, but I would just say, going back to an earlier point about communication, I've had situations where I thought I was doing my best and I was listening objectively and trying to really ascertain all the things I could use to help motivate this person. And in the end, maybe sometimes, and I'll be the first to admit it, sometimes your own ego, your own personal stake in the sport gets a little bit ahead of your coaching ear, and you're not listening sometimes. And then every once in a while, I'll read some of the notes, and to Gareth's point, I'll read in the logs, and I'll go back and I'll read some moments of disillusionment or despair in their training. And I'll kind of remember that we had a conversation about their lifestyle during those weeks where it was tough because kids were sick or this and that. And then I'll come back and I'll talk about priority. And I'll say, as your coach, I really want to talk to you, just kind of get a refresh on what's going on with your priority. And every once in a while, I'll learn through coaching that my clients have some priorities that they really didn't convey well, or I didn't listen well. And I know I'm kind of off topic, but I think it's important that through journaling, through constantly asking your clients about the relationship and about how they see themselves in the sport, is something that you can do to keep the client, but also find new ways to motivate them. So, to answer your question directly, I think, nobody extreme, but I just think that the relationships are so different and so vast that everybody, because we call ourselves personal triathlon coaches, even though we might have group classes, ultimately it comes down to your personal relationship skills. And you
Okay.
have to really remember that that's who you are first and foremost. And sort of go into your bag of tricks, go into training logs, go into communications that might give hints of how to improve or change the relationship.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel that I need like a psychology degree, you know, like
Right,
because
yeah.
you know, like it
You're in a
takes
powerful
up-
position
or a straight
sometimes
jacket
to
or
influence
something.
behavior.
Yeah. Sorry, what is it?
Or a straight jacket.
No, but to your point, you're in a powerful position to influence behavior, and it might not always be swim, bike, and run and training ethics, but also how do they manage their life? You know, Gareth and I were talking about, you know, they'll come to you, I didn't say that respectively, clients will come to you, and their first question is, I got so many things on my plate, where am I going to find time to train? And they're asking you
Which
for
we
that.
have to consider because you know, like it takes, you know, like okay, you know, like run, you know, like bike, you know, like swim and everything. But you know, like if somebody's just going through like super stressful, you know, like time in their lives, like whoa, okay, we cannot push them, you know, like to that, you know, like to, you know, like you're supposed to or we want to because you know, like
Yeah.
they have other stresses in life that are affecting, you know, like their performances. So. You know, like it's about like, you know, like what are you doing? You know, like your workouts, everything. But we're all people, and we have, you know, like all different aspects that, you know, like we have to consider as well.
Right.
You know, as a person. So
Yeah.
you know, I think that's important too.
And do you sometimes, if they have a goal and this stuff like this happens, you go, okay, look, so let's back off this goal?
Oh, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
maybe in the consultation they said, no problem, I can give you 12 hours a week
Right.
for training, and that's great. But then later you realize, hey, you know, you're at 60 hours a week in work. You've got family. You've had other things pop up. We haven't been at 12 hours a week. We've been at 8
Right.
for 4 or 5 weeks now. We have to retool this goal that's several months down the road because we aren't putting in the training time.
Ian and I would hedge ourselves a lot. We were really big on drawing a season map that had a visual representation of what we thought the work volume should be in terms of, you know, the variables of intensity, frequency, and duration. And then we're constantly redrawing that map because all of a sudden, you know, you might
This was supposed to be a big week and it
Yeah,
got this
boom.
small, so then we got to move everything.
maybe you have to learn a new tool on the Word document and how to change it back in the day, and now everything's a little bit more automated and the pie charts, you know, can be changed. But you have to be considerate of people's lifestyles and things that are important to them.
Well, psychologically, everyone's obviously a different athlete and they have different motivations. So some people, it's good. I enjoy embracing naivety, psychoness. If they just want to go nuts and actually see how far they can go, that's an okay thing to embrace sometimes. I get a lot of athletes who have been, especially from past, say, Olympic backgrounds or people like that, have been in a kind of an abusive coach relationship. But I'm talking like the coach has basically just tortured them, and they're now coming for fun. They're looking to have a good time with it, so they're trying to embrace that as well. So you have to understand what that person needs out of it, because some people really like to be tortured. Some people come to my lab and they call it the tower. They're coming to like, hey, they love that, you know. And I think also you can't limit people based on age either. This idea that, you know, I've got people in their 60s who are holding workloads and thriving
amazing,
in things that would
isn't it?
crush me, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you have to look at every person individually.
You know, and it's such a mental sport. I mean, you have to have such focus, you know, to get through all the three disciplines. I mean, what do you like? How do you coach that mental?
Sense of humor.
Yeah.
No one cares apart from you.
Right.
The athlete? The only person who cares is the athlete.
Right.
And like, who was 7th female at the Hawaii Ironman last year? No idea.
Nobody knows.
Don't care. But it's a
Right.
great performance. It's nothing
Yeah.
for that particular person. So I think they have to have a sense of humor that this is fun.
That's a good
Right.
answer.
And if that's not there, then there's something really wrong.
How do you get that? Where you just go, hey, this is fun.
Because look how stupid it is. You're
Yeah.
running around the streets in your underwear. I mean, soaking wet in your underwear, and
And
it's fun. It's
Right.
You can cue that. You could ask, besides a training stress score or a watt meter,
Yeah.
how about a fun scale? How about a scale of perceived fun on the day?
Are you happy? Is it making your life
and-
better, or is it making it worse?
Oh, fun is also, you know, it varies from people. Like some people like being in pain is fun. You know, like it's
Yeah.
just, you know, like it's like I'm gonna like really like kill myself out there, and that is fun.
Yeah.
Like sure, go.
That's the whole mental thing. What you guys are just saying. I've never heard it before, so it's interesting as hell. And it speaks to a lot of stuff I've seen in triathlon of people not smiling just to say it generally, not smiling, and what jackasses they are, what they can be,
Well, the mind's a really powerful tool, and especially before races, when you can start to visualize what your race is going to be like
Right.
and create the day before you even do it, already seeing the success you're going to do. And some people are out of practice of that, and even when they try and see themselves swim, they see themselves break, up into head-up breaststroke with a panic, or they're on the bike and they see them drop their chain, and you have to keep replaying that movie in your mind until you can get through that spot cleanly,
Right.
and then you're starting to create the day that you're going to have. There's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, interesting, great stuff. Let's have some questions. Anybody? Yes.
I've been coaching runners for a long time with my track club, and a lot of the runners I deal with are innately have great ability, and they're very closed off about doing things that a athlete with less ability would pick up on to try to squeak out as much performance as they can. Whereas the other athlete will say, well, I'm a great runner, I don't need to listen to what you're telling me because I've got this innate ability, and they wrongly think that they're always going to have this innate ability. How do you?
Well, I think that as a coach, sometimes you do have to be a bit of a salesman and convince someone, look, yes, you're running at this great pace. Yes, you're super fit and healthy. Yes, you have great technique. We're still going to do this drill, because this drill is going to take everything that you've got and we're just going to move it up a little bit better. There's always benefit. The problem with being great is that it takes a whole season to move the needle. The great thing about being a total newbie is your learning curve is so incredibly steep. Every workout you do, you jump through a platform. So it's about convincing that elite athlete that, look, this is what we're going to do. And it's easy to see because all of the best in the world are still out there doing drills and doing fundamentals to keep themselves on target, to keep their limbs moving accurately, to keep themselves healthy. And it's good to dig into elite stories and references sometimes to sell that to somebody who's really powerful and really fast.
I mean, the elite athlete's a hard person. I mean, I spent years dealing with mostly just professionals. That was how I got into triathlon. I got really sick to death of the lack of gratitude and, getting third place in an Ironman and being a nightmare day. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So my fuse is quite short for people who have that approach now.
Right.
There's too many people who really can benefit from good coaching help.
Yes.
So I don't suffer that type of attitude much anymore. So if I was at that track, I personally wouldn't bother with them. I'd give the attention to someone who really craved it. So if that's your experience, there's loads of people who need your help. I'd give it to them instead. And then they can beat the person who's got the ego. Which is a much nicer experience for everyone.
Any other questions?
How
Yes.
long do you guys think a good amount of time is to learn your coaching philosophy and see if your clients like it and perform well, or to get everything they can out of you and then move on to another coach and learn from them? And
I say 12 weeks for people because that's a block of time that I know I can get some changes. If someone commits to that amount of time, we can do some testing and find out what they need to do. They can go away and do it, and we can retest and then prove either that it worked or it didn't work or it didn't gel. It's very rare, I find, that if people go through that process that they're not hooked, because who doesn't feel the gratitude of seeing improvements? So they see the first data and they see the improved data. It's like, this works. They don't need to think about it too much. They just are then invested and trusting. I find it hard work when I have to try and win someone's trust. I rather let it speak for itself, and then once you've got them, then you can really keep going with them for years maybe.
I think the essence of your question is, how do you choose a coach? Like, what are the first steps you do?
No,
But further down the path.
further down the path.
Okay, good.
I'm in year 3, and I was kind of thinking maybe it'd be 2 years, and then you kind of really, or maybe it was 1 year, so 12 weeks I was a little shocked.
Oh,
to hear you
yes.
say that, but
Yeah, but sometimes you can, it's good for someone just to change coaches for the sake of changing. Like, we don't own anybody. I've had this theory: coaches
Not
will
my
be
own
around
thing,
for a
so.
long time, and athletes come and go, and I'm happy with that because sometimes someone just needs a different conversation, a different approach, a change of stimulus. I mean, physiologically, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results. You've got to change the stimulus. So Ian might just write just a different program than I would write that might work really, really well. Because it comes off the back of, say, a year with me, then a year with him, then a year with Jay. It doesn't matter.
I just think a lot of coaches have different emphasis. I'll cop to mine right up. I'm a technician. I want people to be perfect in their movement, and I'm all over that like a cheap suit. And after an athlete's with me for a long period of time, they've gotten technically very proficient. And if I'm doing my job well, then I'll switch focus for the training and bring on some intensity or whatever the athlete's missing. But a lot of coaches they'll stick to their bias forever. And so it's good for an athlete to say, hey, it's been great. I've learned everything I can learn from you, and now I'm going to go off to somebody else who maybe has a different emphasis.
Do you initiate that ever?
Yeah.
Say, yeah,
Yeah.
time to go, time to move on.
But probably, like a season or or like 6 months or, like where you can see, like what you are doing, is actually having some results. Like if you, like 2 years and, like there's like no results, well, like, it's time to change. But, I think a season when you're like, okay, you see how, like this person works, like what kind of, like workers, if they're understanding what, like what you need, and then kind of like at the end, you're like, hey, like this, like worked for me, this didn't, like I think, I want to like change. Probably, I think as, like 6 months to like a season will be like a good, like amount of time to see if it work or not for you, If it doesn't, like if the communication is not there, maybe it has to be before that, right? So.
I think if I haven't had results though in 12 weeks, I'm not doing something right as a coach. It's my personal feeling. Because I know, physiologically that's really two periods of adaptation. So if they're not shifting, there's something's not working in that relationship. But normally, if you're, as a coach, attentive, it is going to shift. Because you're approaching all these different things and you're looking for the problems as well as the things that are going well. So in 12 weeks, I think you can really judge where you're going with someone very quickly. It's a short period of time. And that's all that sometimes you get with an athlete. Hey, I'm doing Wildflower and it's February the 1st. Okay, that's all we've got, then let's get on with it.
And you said you touched upon something. And how do you choose a coach? How would you?
I think any athlete who's looking for a coach, I think you have to have the conversation. Just get them on the phone and just have a conversation and do a lot of listening. You're going to start it by saying, hey, here's what I've done a little bit in the past and here's what I want to do this season. What do you think? And then just stop talking and make the coach fill the space. And you're going to learn right off if you like the style of that coach. I think you're going to get that really early. Matter of fact, you might even learn sooner than that when the coach says, look, I'm not going to have a conversation with you unless you pay for this consultation or whatever. And then right there, you know that that's not your choice. So or maybe they don't respond fast enough. And that's also a lesson for you, because if they can't respond to the initial call, then there's no way they're going to be there for you when you need them and you're paying them. So just get it started, ask a few questions, listen a lot, and I think right away you'll have a good feel for whether or not that coach is right for you.
I give away a free bike with every initial consultation. So I'm your guy.
Yes.
Can you expand on being L1 certified in CrossFit and how that can help or hurt?
You got 3 hours?
Did you plant this guy? This is a plant.
He's a mole.
Well, I'm going to keep this very brief because I know the worst guy at the party is the guy talking about CrossFit. Okay, it's L1 trainer. We can't use you can't use the C word in CrossFit.
Cancer.
No. No, but what it is it gives you a base level understanding of the CrossFit methodology, and beyond that is how to work within the confines of metabolic conditioning, the energy systems that involved from short-powered, short duration, high-powered, short duration, medium-powered, medium duration, and then oxidative aerobic sport. Learning how to work with Olympic lifting, gymnastics, throwing, jumping.
Magic.
And nutrition. So it's all encompassing. And the exam affords me the ability to work within a CrossFit facility where I'm actually on staff and a member where I do all their auxiliary programming. And now I have CrossFitters doing a run program. They're doing a triathlon program. We're taking that to a twice a year program, but that started about 2 years ago with once a year of these auxiliary programs. So as a strength and conditioning coach, alongside of being a certified triathlon coach, I believe in the sort of inclusive sort of approach to coaching where I really want to make sure that body mechanics are there first and foremost to support their training. Going from global body patterns where they're actually learning how to hold positions that give them power, and then fine-tuning, as I even would say, how to hold your wrists and how to hold head position and shoulders in the arrow position, and making sure all those things are dialed in. And CrossFit is one avenue that I've used to help me broaden my approach toward strength and conditioning. But I hold many other certifications from NASM and what is it now?
Ace.
ACE is now something else. It's been a long time ago. But for me, it's all about broadening my learning base and understanding of how to approach clients with a more inclusive approach to wellness and fitness. Thank you for the question.
Yes.
So y'all have touched on many different aspects of the sport, and I hear flexibility, nutrition, mental stuff. Do you outsource any of this, or are you all really where are your weaknesses in that you outsource to other people? for
Definitely
example?
outsource. Yeah, I don't do any bike fitting. Don't do any open water swim coaching specifically. And I'm happy to, I mean, what happens with me, a lot of other coaches bring their athletes into my lab. So my speciality is obviously that metabolic understanding that a lot of people don't seem to have. So that's where I tend to put my focus. So if there's things that, I will happily send people for bike fits or other things to other people, because you can't know everything about it. And there's too many sort of, you're different, you guys have studied for years, but there's so many weekend certifications where people have these lists of things they've done. And they're really not worth that much. You sit in the USAT weekend and learn very little.
I'd like to hear everybody's. I don't do blood lactate testing, so I send those to Gareth. I'm not as good a run coach as I'd like to be, so I send those to Jamie. I'm not a physical therapist, so I send those to the Silber Center where Adrian works with massage. So there are things that I don't do, and I send those out. I will say I'm the third best bike fitter in Southern California. So I take all of those, and I have tremendous confidence in getting someone to improve their swimming, so I'm really good on that too.
Who's first and second?
First is Dan Enfield, but you can't see him. You just can't get to him. And the second is JT Lyons in San Diego. He's too far away. Come and see me.
How about you?
Well, for instance, I think it's important to have like a PT, like a physical therapist. I know about strength and conditioning. I know the body massage therapist, but there's some stuff beyond my expertise. So I think that would be important to outsource. Bike fitting, that's that's something that I don't do, or even like the threshold stuff like that. So we just gonna work together. Well, even like a doctor, right? Like a podiatrist or something. That's just something that I wouldn't be able to do. That's way beyond my expertise. So I think we just need to have a team of of professionals, to help us out there.
Okay, there, Ben?
I'm okay. Excuse me.
Was that your phone?
No.
Oh.
I wasn't. If there were no other questions, I was going to pose a question to my fellow
We have
colleagues
one more
here.
question.
One more question. I'll take the last question.
Okay.
With race season upon us and with wealth of knowledge on the stage, I think there's a lot of people training for half irons right now, wildflower in particular. And I'm wondering if you can give an example of a way to drop your bike split in a half iron distance. I know I've talked to Ian before about doing that in Olympic and just strategies for in race.
Build a proper aerobic base on the bike before thinking. Wildflower's a great example. People come and say, hey, I'm doing wildflower, I've got to train in the hills, which is common sense, but it's most of the time wrong because people don't have the physiology to go and train in the hills and get benefits from them. They go into train in the hills and they're suddenly working at much higher levels of lactate, they're burning sugars, so they actually don't get any fitter, they just ride in the hills and waste the time. So even if wildflower was 8 weeks away and you had to develop your bike, I would get you doing lots of aerobic base to give you a basis that then you'll be stronger wherever you ride.
But I mean, during the race, because I think I have pretty good feet.
That's interesting. Can I ask you that? How do you know you've got a good aerobic base?
I've had metabolic testing.
And what would that VO2 or lactate?
Lactate.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's the most people would say.
Ago, but
Actually, I don't know. So it's a good answer.
yeah, I don't know. But just ways to get faster during the race. I know there's kind of a few intervals during the race.
In the race.
Well, I would say this too. It's really good to have a course-specific approach. And thank goodness at Wildflower, it's mandatory. A lot of our bike courses are pretty flat in triathlon, so you can kind of just have at it. But the thing about the Wildflower long course bike route is that the first 3/4 of that ride are pretty forgiving, and it's very easy to override that. And then by the time you're in the last quarter of that ride, when the hammer really drops and it gets very hilly and it's very difficult, a lot of people are already wasted by the time they get there. So just an approach, a strategy for the course itself would be to really ride easy for the first 3 quarters, which is hard to do. It's hard to hold yourself back because that's the flat, fast bit. But I would urge you to stay comfortable, keep your heart rate low, keep your nutrition and hydration coming in so you can digest it. That way, when you get to the base of nasty grade plus the hills that follow, you're fresher to ride that part of the course faster. And of course, we're still talking about a triathlon here, so you have to run off that pretty well too.
And that run's the hardest run.
That's
the
tough
run
run.
at Wildflower's way harder than the bike, isn't it?
Yeah,
In my experience, you know.
It is.
The biggest mindset is to make concessions on the bike course to save your energy for the run. And the ironic thing about that course is it's a hilly run course, but it's so backloaded with so much adversity with the hills, the heat, the fact that it's just way later into the race, that it really comes down to managing your bike, everything from your power output to your nutritional hydration strategy.
That's true for the run there too. You know, the beginning of that run, there are 3 hills in the first 5 miles that are so dastardly that if you are willing to walk those 3 hills, then what you usually get is the ability to run from mile 6 to, well, now because the course is tweaked a little bit, from mile 6 to the finish line, because that's a much flatter portion of the course. The people who try and charge those 3 hills in the early part of the race sometimes blow up so badly they end up walking the good part of the run course. So it's about tactically knowing the topography of that course and approaching it in a way so that you're really better off at the second half. Now, because we're here and we have the audience, I just want to say what I've described is a negative split, and it's the best way to approach any course, even something insanely flat, which is you take the bike course, you determine where the middle is, you ride the first half of that a little easier and the second half faster, and you guarantee yourself the best possible split for that race. That's something every endurance coach and athlete approaches it with.
Okay, one more question?
Is there like a good book on nutrition or something like that that's helpful, or a video even?
There's so many things. You mean food nutrition, or are you talking like fueling? Because fueling's a different, very person-specific thing, and most people mess it up because they make it so complicated. There doesn't need to be a book on triathlon nutrition in terms of fueling events. It's really simple. It's just liquid. You need liquid, and it's a very, very simple. I'll email anyone that sort of formula if you like, because most people overcomplicate it. You know, you could distill it down to most guys need 250 to about 300 calories per hour in about 224 fluid ounces of liquid, and they need about 400 to 600 milligrams of sodium. And if everyone started at that baseline and they drank that, they didn't eat anything, there'd be much less problems about triathlon nutrition. And the ladies, you can just back that off by sort of 20%. And you're in the really safe ballpark. Unfortunately, that goes against all the products that you're being sold most of the time. And a book will only take you 300 pages to tell you that same little bit of advice. So you need a summary. You need a one-slide summary. And it's really simple.
I go to the magazines for that.
Yeah. It's amazing how many studies. Isn't it amazing how many studies there are, though, that there's studies that will tell you these products work. That if you do this, this, and this, and this, it's guaranteed in a laboratory to make you faster. But they're all conflicting with each other.
Right.
I think we've gotten to a point now, too, where a lot of this deeply engineered nutrition is working against us to some extent. And I think that racing with, I'm going to use the term whole food, something that isn't as processed, you can get great success from that. Also, there's a lot of cultural history that screws us up. My parents were all anti-fat. I think a lot of our parents were, just because there was a time in our society when everything just had to be fat-free. And then quite recently, we kind of went through this anti-carb thing. And I think we're starting to realize that actually it's more complicated than that. There's a lot of very good fats. Any non-animal fat can be very beneficial for an endurance athlete because there's an enormous amount of energy in that. And then within the carbohydrate span, there are good carbohydrates and bad ones, and they're all listed on a glycemic scale. A high glycemic carb becomes blood sugar right away, and you get a reduction after that spike of energy. And a low glycemic carb has a really long burn, and you can get a nice steady piece of energy out of that. So I think in your own life, even as a non-athlete, when you're not training, or during a race, there are times when you can reach into those different sources and get the energy that you need. It's just a matter of educating yourself a little bit on that.
And there's lots of good things like, that fast sugar's got its place. That long chain glucose polymer's got its place as well. But there's I don't have any specific books that can distill it down without trying to sell you something other than...
I'd rather have you go to a person who's going to take your blood in his office and analyze your specific needs, and that person is Matt Mahold. He's here in LA, and he's fabulous. So I would rather have you go see Matt, and that's another outsource.
And you can get even fancier. Does anybody here weigh and measure their food? Well, there we go.
One nut job. Any other nut jobs?
Yeah, and balancing out the macronutrients is something that has been sort of pushed back and forth in terms of percentages between fat, carbohydrates, and proteins. But I think a lot of people are achieving through their general nutrition by just really looking at their plate and dividing it into the pie chart of their macronutrients and trying to find that balance that works with their energy systems and their blood type. And people are getting really good results. And to Ian's point, whole foods and taking away the processed stuff, I think people are really getting back to just basics and getting really great results.
I mean, especially there's two things we've learnt in my lab, really specifically we weren't looking for. The first one was definitely all you need when you're racing: carbohydrates, water, electrolytes. You don't need branched chain amino acids or vitamin B, or you don't need anything else. Your body's under so much stress. You need to take in what you need at that time, get it through your system so you can use it. That's it. So chocolate milk doesn't play into that. It's sales. Endurox R4 is not a product to use on the bike, So that's fueling is really, really simple. Nutrition gets really more complicated because it comes into ethics and what you think's right to eat. Whether you
Great point.
you should do this, you should do that, or the other. There's no right thing on that. But we've definitely seen, without trying to, we've done hundreds and hundreds of VO2 tests where the fuel mix, your pre-test fuel mix, affects how you perform. It's like if you've got a Ferrari engine but you put diesel in it, it doesn't perform like a Ferrari, but it's still a Ferrari. Same with the VO2 test. If you come full of sugars and the wrong nutrition, you won't perform to your best. And we found, without any doubt, proper balanced protein, fats and carbs in probably the equal amounts. So it's that the breakfast burrito is the best fuel for any athlete, which is basically high quality proteins, some good quality carbs and some good fats. That will make people burn fats, and fats is the number one fuel source for an endurance athlete. So those sorts of things really work. So you can really simplify it down. You need a balance most of the time.
Tacos por favor, Olympic, and what is it, 14?
14.
Yes.
I made Ian eat bacon 3 times this past weekend on a surf trip. And look at him.
My wife's a vegan and she's in the audience. Thanks for that. That's great.
And you shot and killed the pig, didn't you, right there? So why don't we thank these gentlemen,
Just
Adrian,
open up the windows next time you go.
Sleep on the couch.
Gareth, Ian, and Jamie. Very informative. Thank you very much.